Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a video about your guys' most commonly asked questions. So a couple of days ago I sent out a questionnaire on Reddit asking whether you guys had any burning questions that you'd like to ask about anything from A Levels to UCAT to GCSEs. And today I'll be answering the questions that I received on the Google form, and hopefully they'll be useful for you guys. So let's dive right in. Okay, so we're going to start with a couple of questions by National Safe 8935 on Reddit. And first of all, they ask, people say the jump from GCSE to A-level is more than A-level to degree. Is this true? Well, unfortunately, I haven't quite started my degree yet, so I can't really provide the comparison. But I'd say the jump from GCSE to A-level, depending on your school, is honestly not as bad as many people make it out to be. I think especially from year 11 to year 12, the content, in my subjects at least, which are biology, maths, chemistry and German, weren't too vastly different. I think in chemistry you get introduced to many different concepts which you weren't aware of before, similar in biology, but they're all building on concepts that you learned at GCSE. So as long as you were comfortable with these concepts at GCSE and understood them fully, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. I think you can definitely also help to reduce this jump by doing a little bit of pre-reading. I'll make a video on that shortly. Nothing too heavy, nothing too major, but just familiarization with the content definitely can help in this respect. Okay, so now moving on to another question by National Safe 8935 on Reddit is a couple of questions about the EPQ. So they ask, do you have to do a presentation at the end of your EPQ? And if yes, I have more questions. They ask, can you give me a brief explanation of what it entails? So supposing you're just talking about the presentation, which actually is quite a small part of the EPQ itself, it essentially entails making a PowerPoint presentation about your research process, your research findings, and any major obstacles or challenges and decisions you made along the way, and presenting these to your supervisor and in most cases a small audience. For me, I had to present it to the people in my EPQ tutor group, as well as my supervisor and another teacher. They say it's supposed to be 30 minutes long, so it's kind of just a general overview of your process of research, as well as your findings that you give. How much work is it? Assuming you're talking about the EPQ on the whole, it is slightly in between an AS and an A level. It's 1 year, depending on your school, you'll either do it in year 12 or 13. Mine did it in year 12. So it is designed to be quite a lot of work. I think they have certain numbers, around 30 hours of work, I think it's supposed to be in total. So it's no small feat. However, I think if you're pre-planned and if you are giving little but often consistent efforts to get work done, it shouldn't be too much of an obstacle, but you do have to be very disciplined and get the work done because no one else is going to do it for you. Is it a sensible idea to choose if you're already doing 3 essay-based subjects? I think there are two sides of this argument. If you're already doing essay-based subjects, I think the EPQ can definitely be very complementary since you're developing these skills through your essay subjects anyways, which you can apply to EPQ and actually vice versa as well. I'm not sure whether I'd say your other subjects really influences how much you'll excel at your EPQ. For example, I did very STEM subjects, but I found my EPQ so much fun. There is a writing aspect, but there's also lots that aren't really related to your other A-levels, such as research and planning. So I wouldn't say your subjects should necessarily impact whether or not you want to do an EPQ. I'd say it's perfectly fine to go ahead with 3 essay subjects and get that EPQ done. Is it worthwhile on uni applications? Me personally, I found it incredibly useful. I found it was a really pertinent thing to talk about on my personal statement. And also during my interview, I did get asked a lot about my EPQ, but more indirectly, so the findings I had from it. Similarly, I think it just teaches you great skills for later life. But I think in the context of your university life and career in general, the skills you learn, for example, citations, researching and analysing sources, are really, really useful. I'll make a full video on my EPQ later, so do subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Okay, and now we have this question from u/Moiranium on Reddit. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, but they ask, what is the most important advice you can give to someone taking their GCSEs or IGCSEs? I think if I had to think of a single most important piece of advice, it would be get the work done now rather than later. I think during GCSEs it really does pay to be prepared and to not leave things to the last minute. So if you're known to be a professional procrastinator, then I'd say try as hard as you can to wean yourself off of that habit, because your future self really will thank you, especially when during exam season the workload gets very heavy. You don't want to have to be sifting through mounds and mounds of work that you didn't do before, because that's just going to add to the stress and no one really wants that. Additionally, I would say iron out your mistakes sooner rather than later as well. So if you don't understand a topic, immediately go to your teachers or friends and ask about it to try and get that sorted out before proceeding further. Not only in the context of GCSEs, but also more widely. For example, if there's a subject you want to do for A level, you need to really be confident in your fundamentals going into A levels from GCSEs to help smoothen out that jump as well. So I just say be organised, be disciplined. I know it's easier said than done, but if you can train yourself out of bad habits now, your future self really will thank you for it. Jumpshot user 12 on Reddit asks, what was your revision method and what website did you use? And they're also taking chemistry and maths next year. So I'll just answer for the subjects we have in common, so chemistry and maths. For chemistry, I ensured I had a fundamental understanding of all of the topics, and I think for chemistry especially, it's vital that the topics they teach at the beginning of the course are really deeply ingrained, because so many fundamentals then branch out from that, so you need to have a good understanding of that. And for maths, it really was just past paper questions and practice questions. Anywhere you can find practice questions, just do as many as you can. So textbooks, worksheets, ask your teachers, buy extra resources, CGP, everything. And talking about websites, PMT definitely was a huge godsend for me. The link to that will be in the description. Search up physics and maths tutor. They have absolutely anything you could ever want. They have specific targeted practice on certain topics. They have past exam papers, everything. So go and check them out. If you're looking for paid resources, I think many people recommend Save My Exams. Me personally, I didn't use that. Since I thought that there were other free resources out there which could be equally as good. But if you check out the website and you think they'll help you, then by all means, it may not be a bad investment. But honestly, I think PMT was just the main website I used alongside textbooks and worksheets provided by my teachers. And for maths, things like Dr. Frost Maths, very good practice if your school's a subscription. Madass Maths and Maths Genie also have really good worksheets, so I'll link those all in the description below, which you can go and check out all for free. Okay, another question. How much work or information are you expected to find out on your own, and do teachers go over all content from the spec in class, or do you have to research some yourself? This is a good question. I think officially all schools are required to teach the syllabus. However, certain teachers I found have different teaching styles. For example, some lessons in my school were self-teach sessions where they would give you sort of an outline of what they wanted you to go and find out, and you had to go research that yourself, but with teacher supervision, so you could always ask them for help if needed. I think all schools are required to do that, so I'd be surprised if they just left out chunks of the spec. I don't think they'll do that. However, if you want to be really proactive and get ahead in your lessons, you can, outside of lesson time, do some extra reading, either around the spec or about topics that will come up in future lessons so that you're that bit more prepared. So it's personal preference about how much you want to do outside of lesson time, but don't worry, your teachers should cover everything that you need for your exams. Okay, another question we've received is, how do you manage to juggle your A-level studies with other hobbies you may have, and do I need to give these hobbies up? Obviously, everyone has 24 hours in a day, so it's about how you're spending your time. And I think a really big thing that helped me was cutting out time wasters. Things like Instagram, social media, unnecessary chat with people you don't really know or care about, quite frankly, on social media. These used to take up a huge proportion of my life, and I found once I cut these out or limited them, I was reclaiming all of this time in the day, which I could either use for my hobbies or work, which meant that these were both able to coexist in my life. And so I think for you, it's about looking into your life, thinking about things that you're currently doing that aren't giving you anything back, things that aren't helping you to relax, aren't helping you to learn, aren't helping you to forge new connections or grow as a person. And I think a main culprit for this definitely is doom scrolling on social media. And so I'd say be strict with yourself, be harsh with yourself, put in those barriers, things like apps to block your social media, things like screen time restrictions. I think once you do that, you'll find that you're actually able to gain a lot more from your day and able to do a lot more than you currently are doing. That would be my main piece of advice. Definitely do not give all your hobbies up to study. However, you need to find a balance. For example, if you have a very time-consuming hobby that means you have absolutely no time to revise, you may want to look into cutting your time in that hobby down as much as possible, because revision at A-level is quite intense, especially during exam time. However, a work-life balance is vital, and I found that keeping up my hobbies actually had a positive effect on my studies, as it meant that I wasn't getting overwhelmed or burnt out at any point in the process. And similarly, if you're starting to think about university applications, having those extracurriculars on there provides things you can talk about in terms of skills and shows sort of your breadth of character. So no, definitely don't give up your hobbies, but try and be mindful about how much time you're dedicating to revision. We have another question about A-levels, and someone's asked, how much of A-levels is application of knowledge instead of recall? I think this is a really, really good question and shows great insight, because actually one of the main things that differentiates A-levels from GCSEs is the fact that A-levels is very application heavy, and it really isn't enough at A-level to just cram everything the night before and go into the test. You need to have a solid foundation. And so I'd say there are definitely, in my subjects at least, elements of recall. For example, in biology, you need to know certain names of things, certain classifications. Same in chemistry, just learning your definitions by rote. Same in maths, for example, certain proofs you just need to learn how to do. So there definitely is still that element of recall, but it plays a smaller role and is surrounded by masses, I'd say, of application of knowledge. And so, yeah, A-level definitely has a bigger focus on this application, which makes it more important than ever that you understand your content and don't just blindly learn it, which I think is good advice for even people studying their GCSEs. It's a skill that will serve them well, but A-level, it's especially pertinent. Another question we have is, what technology do you recommend getting for A-levels or GCSEs? This definitely depends on your budget, I'd say, but for my studies, I used the iPad Pro and I also had a MacBook. And I think these two in conjunction worked really well together. I found often having two screens meant that I could have, for example, revision lists up on one screen and notes being made on another. So I think a touchscreen laptop combo can be a very good choice. There are many budget-friendly options out there on the market. They don't have to be Apple per se, as these are often pricier. But I think it's definitely worthwhile having a device you can write on, as digitalized notes, in my opinion, are superior to paper notes. And also having another screen there, whether that be, I don't know, another iPad or a desktop or a laptop, can be very good in conjunction. Another user from Reddit asks, what is some good life advice you would like to share from your experience? A phrase that really got me through times of tough revision and grueling study sessions was the fact that time will pass anyways, whether or not you do the work, whether or not you sit there for an hour scrolling on TikTok or an hour reviewing your past mistakes on past papers. At the end of the day, the hour will be gone either way, and so you should spend it doing something productive. However, I do really believe that you should respect your own boundaries, and if you're really feeling not up to work, then don't force yourself, because this will cause more harm than good. Burnout is a very real risk, and so listen to yourself. But if it's just a case of laziness on a particular day, try and push yourself, but you know yourself best. So being able to respect yourself whilst also being disciplined is good advice that you can take on, not only for this period of your life, but also beyond. Okay, we have another question. When should you start looking for unis? This is a good question. I think it depends on your school, but most schools launch the whole UCAS thing at the end of year 12. So then you have the whole summer to go to certain open days and research into unis. If I recall correctly, at my school, they started doing some sort of university workshops and introducing certain universities. They had people come in to talk about the universities at the end of year 12. But the official UCAS process only really officially launches beginning of year 13. I think if you're really eager about uni, there is no harm in going early. For example, over the summer, going to certain open days, researching into them. It definitely is good to be prepared. but I think officially you don't really have to start worrying about it until sort of the beginning of year 13. Another of our questions is, what is life? That's a really good question, actually. I fear I do not have the qualifications to answer that, but I'd say life is whatever you make it. The world is your oyster. You are the sailor of your ship. You control your own life, so go out there and seize the day and create your own life, I suppose. Another question asks, what are some productive hobbies that you would recommend doing? I assume by productive you mean things that will help you grow and learn new things and potentially look good on your university application. Me personally, throughout sixth form, my main hobbies were playing tennis, going to the gym and playing chess, as well as reading certain books, and also partaking in school clubs such as debate and oracy and MUN. And those helped me relax, but also had some aspect of productivity to them. And I think that's key in finding a hobby. You want to do something that's enjoyable for you and something that you look forward to, but also something that has an element of productivity to it and something that you're learning something out of. So I think that a main one can be coaching or tutoring. This helps you develop communication skills, patience, ability to work with others, which are transferable skills that you can mention and name drop in any CV or personal statement to instantly make you stand out. Things like if you're into sport, try applying for a job as a coach at your sports club. Equally, you can, by word of mouth, go around advertising to be a tutor or a babysitter or anything that requires interactions with children or young people. That can be whether academic or hobbies, or if there's something you're really good at, can you try teaching that to others? Additionally, sport is always a really good way, specifically team sports, to foster that sense of teamwork. So if you're interested in that, why not go and join a sports club in your area? And if you're looking for more academic things, joining things like drama societies, debate societies, or other oracy-related pursuits can definitely have a huge reward. For example, I joined MUN at my school, and I felt that definitely helped me excel at public speaking and definitely served me well in interviews, and was also something I could talk about in my personal statement, as it links a lot to teamwork and cooperation with others. So those are the main hobbies I would recommend. So that's the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to everyone who sent in questions. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the form is still open. So if you guys have thought of anything you'd like to ask, the Google Forms link will be in the description below. So just click on that and you can submit any questions. There will be sequels to this video, so feel free to drop in questions anytime you would like. I will be publishing a specific one about my medicine application and specifically the Oxbridge medicine application process in due course. So make sure to stay subscribed if you're interested in that. Also check out my other videos if you're interested. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.